Hello Shortcuts, this is video 2 for the Shortcuts price list, which will go out at 9 p.m. Wednesday 14th Sydney time, Australia. This is a jazz, funk, reggae and blues list. So I've decided to start with a lovely Japanese pressing of John Coltrane's Blue Train. So this is BLP 1577, which I suspect is the late 70s Blue Note repress. It's been well documented on this channel that there are lots of John Coltrane records that I just do not get on with. I just can't crack the code of A Love Supreme, for example. I have a very good friend, Wayne, who's part of a couple of other little musical groups that I'm part of, and he will say that is his favorite record of all time, and he can wax lyrical about that record. I've listened to it. It is mystifying, but this record, Blue Train, is a little bit different. This record is obviously before A Love Supreme and marked a turning point. I love the fact that this is his only record for Blue Note. And how he got to this record is somewhat tragic, really. I mean, he was a masterful player in probably the greatest Miles Davis band. And in fact, this record is on the list, working with the Miles Davis Quintet of John Coltrane, Red Garland, Paul Chambers, Philly Joe Jones. And this record was released a few years before, maybe 1-2 years before Blue Train. And so how did he go from working with Miles Davis and releasing a tranche of records with Miles Davis to Blue Train, where he's playing with Lee Morgan on trumpet, Curtis Fuller on trombone, obviously John Coltrane tenor sax, Kenny Drew on piano, Paul Chambers on bass, and Philly Joe Jones on drums. He got there because Miles Davis fired him. And he fired him because he was a heroin junkie and a drunk. And he kept missing gigs, and I don't know. I mean, I haven't delved into this too deeply, but I think, having read a little bit of Miles Davis's biography, he describes John Coltrane at that time in pretty tough ways. Describes him as a vagrant, sleeping in his own clothes for days on end. And maybe getting fired from the Miles Davis Quintet was a good thing, because he went into rehab, he cleaned up for a bit, played with Thelonious Monk on a couple of great records, and then went into the studio with Rudy Van Gelder and the Blue Note crew and made this. It's a striking record. I think I'm not a jazz freak, so this is all new news to me. These records I'm learning as I go, probably at the same speed as some of you are. But what transfixed people at the time of this record was that he wrote a lot of the music himself, but he also started to play around with chord progressions in a way that the jazz people at the time would effectively say, that's not the pattern. That's not the recipe. Miles Davis described Coltrane as the loudest and fastest saxophone player he'd ever heard. But he was also the most different. He obviously charged into the world of modal and other things that results in Love Supreme, which is a code that I have not cracked. But Blue Train is different. Blue Train, definitely, the word blue is a cue. You can hear the blues seeping through many of these tracks. But it's also more accessible, more melodic, and it's got a deepness to it. It's deeply serious music, and you can feel the intent behind it, which is, I think, part of the reason why it's so compelling now, nearly 60, 70 years later. So Coltrane, we've already spoken a little bit, working with the Miles Davis Quintet, again, mono on the Prestige label. Some of you have been working your way through these. There's Steamin', and there's Working, and there's, I've forgotten some of the others now. There were 5 records that Miles Davis cranked out to get out of a record contract, effectively. Cooking, Relaxing, and Working is right up there with any of them. Train's Blues being a song that leads us gently toward Blue Train. So they're interconnected. And I also thought I wanted to put one other jazz record up here. This is Dexter Gordon's Our Man in Paris. Now, what you'll notice about this record is it's still sealed. This is one of that series from, I want to say it's 78, but I'm going to have to double check before Wednesday. The Blue Note 4000 Masterpiece series. Can you see the Swing Journal seal of approval? That was like the rubber stamp by the greatest jazz and blues magazine in Japan that said this record is great. And what you got here is Dexter Gordon on sax, Bud Powell, Pierre Michelot, and Kenny Clark. Pierre Michelot being interesting because, as the name suggests, it was recorded in Paris. A lot of jazz musicians in the late 50s and early 60s spent their time in Paris, where they were accepted in ways that they couldn't really experience in their home country, which is worthy of discussion separately. But you've got Doing All Right and Go by Dexter Gordon, but a lot of people think this is the one. What's interesting is, I think it was a Kenny Drew. The pianist wasn't meant to be Bud Powell, and originally they were going to make a record of originals, but Bud Powell turned up to the studio and he went, "No, I don't play new music, I only play standards." So he cracked the whip, and they ended up making a record of standards, Scrapple from the Apple, Willow Weep from Me, and a really, really fine version of A Night in Tunisia, which became somewhat of a Blue Note touchstone. These are increasingly rare now, these sealed records from back in the day. Some of you bought some a few years back when I had a few, and the feedback was just spectacular. So there you have it, sealed Dexter Gordon, Our Man in Paris. 5-star reviews follow around this record, and I'm not familiar with it. All right, one more jazz record, and this has got one of my favorite stories. It's true. So, Thelonious Monk, forever linked to the wonderful Riverside label. I think his first 4 or 5 years as a recording musician were based on the Riverside label, and just about all those records are great. My favorite Riverside is Them Dirty Blues by the Cannonball Adderley Quintet. I have a copy in the case, and I forgot to bring it, which I just realized. But you get Mysterioso and all sorts of amazing records on Riverside. The Unique Thelonious Monk was his second record on Riverside, and like Our Man in Paris by Dexter Gordon, it is standards. So you've got Memories of You, Honeysuckle Rose, Tea for Two, Just You, Just Me, Hart and Rogers, You Are Too Beautiful. Only three musicians on this: Thelonious Monk on piano, Oscar Pettiford on bass, and the always wonderful Art Blakey on drums. But don't let that make you think this isn't a majestically kind of diverse and interesting record, because it really is. And the bit of this that I love is the original versions of this in the US were sold with postage stamps. And some of those postage stamps made their way into circulation, resulting in Riverside getting admonished by the US Postal Service and being told, don't break the law. Brilliant. The Unique Thelonious Monk. It is a seriously playful and fun record, as is this early 80s roots reggae, Japanese press. This is the Mighty Diamonds, that three-way harmony vocal style of those late 70s, early 80s reggae records. Just fun on a page. And then the record that kind of cracked Bob Marley in the US, Kaya. I don't know whether it's pronounced Kaya or Kaya. I always get this wherever I can, because the Japanese pressing of this is beautiful. It is, it's already a really warm and inviting record. It is like hot chocolate. But the Japanese, and this Japanese first press of this is so nice. It's so nice. And I know a bunch of you have got it. So a lot of you hopefully are nodding along going, yeah, it really is. Kaya by the beautiful Bob Marley. I got 3 records to go, 1 blues and 2 funk. I'm going to go with the blues first. 1971, John Lee Hooker and Canned Heat. Boogie with Hooker and Heat. A lot of presses of this record put in kind of brackets afterwards, Infinite Boogie. And you know what? When you've got, let's have a look, 10 minutes and 57 seconds of Sweet 16, or the classic, there's the Whiskey and Women or Boogie Chillin', and some of these songs just creep out and just keep going. They just hit a groove and go. But it is somewhat of a blues classic. This you've got acoustic kind of John Lee working some stuff out. Probably the best way to describe it. This was his highest charting record at the time. But then where this record really catches fire are the 5 tracks when the full Canned Heat kind of crack in. There's a couple of songs that John Lee plays with Alan. Is it Alan Winter? I want to say it's Alan Winter. He was the pianist of Canned Heat, and he died before this record could be released. So this was his last recorded work. I hadn't actually looked at the gatefold until there. It's really pretty. And this is a German pressing of Hooker and Heat, John Lee Hooker and Canned Heat. All right, and I've got 2 70s funk records to finish on. We've got La Belle, Nightbirds, and Wild and Peaceful, Cool and the Gang, both Japanese first presses. Labelle, Nightbirds, the Labelle is the trio of female singers. The most famous track on this record, of course, being Lady Marmalade, but this record crossed over, and in thanks in no small part to one of my favourite bands being the band on this record, the Meters. So the Meters are Labelle's backing band for Nightbirds. That is a properly funky and great record. Wild and Peaceful, Cool and the Gang's fourth record, famous for jungle boogie and funky stuff. Still hear a little bit of the jazz kind of stylings of their early work back when they were kind of killing it as an amazing jazz group. And look, I think Wild and Peaceful is by quite some considerable margin their best album. In fact, in many ways, other than their greatest hits, probably the album to have. And this is a lovely copy. It's hard to find. Nightbirds, don't sleep on this one. If you've not heard this record, give it a spin with fresh ears, and you might well be pleasantly surprised. So there you have it. Funk, blues, reggae, and jazz. Price list will go out 9 p.m. this Wednesday, the 14th of February, as always. Hope you saw something interesting in there. As always, please subscribe, leave a comment, or drop me a note. Let me know you're there. And thank you for watching.